Hi everyone, my name is Annie Walters and I am doing Reflection 3, Justice Chapter 5, What Matters is the Motive by Immanuel Kant. I studied Immanuel Kant back in one of my art history classes here at UT about 3 years ago, and I remember just trying to wrap my head around what in the heck he's talking about in his philosophy, and I remember struggling with it, and here we are 3 years later, and I'm still having problems with it. I even watched a couple videos. I read the book twice, just trying to figure out how to answer these questions. And so the two questions that we are discussing is it wrong to lie to a murderer? And does the shopkeeper's action have moral worth? So I'm going to start with the second one first. Does the shopkeeper's action have moral worth? Just to make the long story short, a child comes in to buy a loaf of bread from a shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper kind of ponders about maybe overcharging this child because the child wouldn't know. But he decides not to because he doesn't want to hurt his reputation in case, adults found out or anything like that. He doesn't want to have his store under fire, basically. And in Kant's eyes, the shopkeeper's action does not have moral worth because he's not doing it out of the sense of duty. And Kant thinks that the sense of duty, doing something that you're supposed to do, not because it feels good, is the way that we should go, and how that kind of affects the categorical imperative. He wants that. If you're doing something because you want this, or you're doing it because it makes you happy, or you get joy out of it, that's seen as a hypothetical imperative, and that's something that Kant does not think is the correct thing. And so, Kant does not think that the shopkeeper's action has moral worth. So there's that one, and then the second one, is it wrong to lie to a murderer? Kant thinks, and also the author of the book, Sandel, argues with Kant. He tries to defend him, basically saying that, there's kind of gray lines where it's okay to lie to a murderer with it not hurting your categorical imperative or your freedom or your intelligible self-authorized law. And, I didn't necessarily agree with that because a lie is a lie. So, Kant argues that if you take any part of something, then, telling a murderer, well, I saw this person over here, and he finds someone, then technically you're also responsible for the person's death. And you could go to court for it and have all of these issues. And, do you want to lie to a murderer to keep your friend safe? Yes, of course. They're running to you because they think that you can help them. Obviously they picked your house to hide into to stay away from that murderer. But, this was a tough question because I would probably want to try to lie to somebody. I would, at least for a murderer, because, you're supposed to treat somebody as a rational human being. That's what Kant wants. However, does a murderer classify as somebody that is a rational human being if they're going to be a murderer? And, I wrestled back and forth with that because I think that you should be treating everybody as a rational human being, but at the same time, if they're out to do no good, I don't really see that as a rational thing. So, because it is a murderer, I think that it would be okay to lie to a murderer because of their planning of what they want to do. But if it's somebody else that's not a murderer, that's somebody that has, they're trying to be rational and they're just looking for somebody, they're not up to, anything bad or evil, then yeah, I think it's okay to tell them, and not to lie to them. But because it is a murderer, I probably would tell a little white lie just to save my friend. Would it be different if it was a stranger that ran into my house? Maybe. There's tons of little tiny things that you also need to keep in mind of. This video is very short. It's very fill in the blank. And so I don't think it's wrong to lie to a murderer specifically. And that's my discussion.